Gallagher.
Illegal substitution, too many men on the field, Saskatchewan.
Gizmo has a block and the sideline. He has not stepped out. He may go all the way. He needs one block and he'll do it easily.
Promise Mess I wouldn't do this.
McDavid stops up. What a move. Shoots. Scores!
Hey everybody, welcome to The Outsiders, powered by the Macintosh Group at RE/MAX River City. I'm Bryn Griffiths, he's Robin Brownlee. Look who's joining us. Yes, from 630 CHED and Sportsnet, it's the Oilers' voice, Jack Michaels. Jack, how you doing?
Good to see you guys again. It's been a while.
It has been way too long. We were just talking about that last week. We should have had you on way sooner than this, but is there any better day than the first day of the Stanley Cup Playoffs?
Well, I'm a little distracted, I gotta be honest, because that thing behind you, I'm starting to see a spaceship or something. I don't know what's going on, but it's freaking me out.
You're talking about this thing behind me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you look close enough, I'm starting to see visions. Yeah, back from the college days. Robin, we all remember those days, huh?
Oh, yes. Hey, look, Jack, everybody in this town obviously is talking about the Oilers and the Kings opening up tonight at Rogers Place. One minor thing I want to ask you about before we get into the meat and potatoes, though. I noticed out there fans have started a petition saying, we want Jack, we want Louis. It's not as simple as that. But what I would say is this, and I would assume you maybe take it the same way. I think it's a great compliment to the work that you and Louis have done to this point. And now when the fun really begins for the hardcore fans, they're saying, hey, we'd like Jack and Louis. That's not going to happen tonight. What can you tell us about it?
Well, I mean, again, I'm flattered to some degree, but I also feel like, it puts me in a tough position because I certainly don't want to be disrespectful to my colleagues out there. And, I get it. I think people obviously, get familiar with the team and they want to see that team continue in perpetuity, but that's not the way network television works. And, I'm looking forward to, being reunited with my partner, Bob Stauffer, on 630 CHED and the Oilers Radio Network. And I don't view it as a step down or a demotion. I'm just as excited to, pursue what's ahead for the team in that medium as I would have on Sportsnet, to be candid with you.
And for you, if this team was to do the unthinkable or the thinkable and do the run all the way to the Cup final, you'd be doing play-by-play of that, whereas on television, there's a number one crew, and that's Craig Simpson and Chris Cuthbert. You'd be pushed back then anyway. So here you get an opportunity to get right back in there and have some fun with it, and we know you're going to have fun with it.
Well, I mean, that is an excellent point, and that's the way, we kind of structured this deal, is so that, when the games mattered, I wouldn't be, left there hanging the bag. So I'm totally at peace with whatever decision Sportsnet wants to make, because I know that when the games really matter, I'm still going to have an opportunity to call them. And that was always the most important thing for me, is to be part of the club the whole season through. And by part of the club, I mean a very periphery part of the club. But when you follow something, you don't want to ever put the brakes on it until you see it come to its completion. I know Robin has had this experience, like it'd be the equivalent of Robin getting yanked off the beat, in the second round against Colorado, or in all those playoff matchups against Dallas. You don't work for the whole season not to be able to get some taste of the playoffs. And so, for me, radio is always going to be my first love. I feel like the one thing about this, assignment on Sportsnet the last 2 years is it's really helped me sharpen up, I think, in both mediums. I don't think it's weakened me in either. I think it's made me focus and understand on a day in, day out basis what my audience is and what they're asking for.
It's funny too. And let's just strike the difference between unlikely, as Bryn said, and impossible. This is the shirt from the 2006 Stanley Cup final. And so that was unlikely, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. Let's jump ahead to today, Jack. Whoever's calling the game, let's talk about the guys that matter, and that's the hockey club. When I look at this Oilers group, and I've looked at it from afar, I'm not a beat man anymore, I think this is the best club they've put on the ice since that 2006 Stanley Cup final team. I like Hyman. I like Kane. I like the growth of the young players. And, of course, there's the two guys at the top of the marquee. When you look at this club going into this first game of the first round, what do you see?
Well, I tend to defer to the players as you do, Robin. And when Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's the longest tenured Oiler, says this is the deepest club we've had, I'm willing to take that as face value. I mean, they've got 10 guys in double-digit goal scoring, 2 others that finished with 9. There's production up and down the lineup. There's guys on your fourth line who've produced in the playoffs before, like Zach Kassian. There's guys on your fourth line who I think could be a tremendous wild card, like Ryan McLeod, who's the one guy on the team that can probably keep up with Connor McDavid on a regular basis. And I think Jay Woodcroft has constructed a lineup where it's malleable. If you want to play Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at center, you can. If you want to play Ryan McLeod at center, you can. You can move both those guys to left wing if you need to. You can slide, even if you go Evander Kane with Connor McDavid in the middle, you can bring Leon Draisaitl over on the right side for a shift at the tail end of a penalty kill or to wrap up a period. We've seen that in recent weeks. It's a malleable lineup with a ton of guys who can play center and all 3 forward positions. I think back to, actually, it's interesting playing Los Angeles, a conversation I had with Todd McClellan about 7 years ago when he was still coach of San Jose. He goes, if I was a general manager, I'd draft all centers. And we'll figure it out from there. And think about that team. Often you had 3 guys who played center for most of their career on the same line, Marlowe, Thornton, and Pavelski. So I like the versatility of this lineup, and really the underrated aspect for me is the depth on defense. Yeah. All of a sudden, this is a legitimate NHL defense where Darnell Nurse is kind of the junior member. Everyone else has played 600-700 games. Brett Kulak, you could say, all right, well, he hasn't, but what has he done recently? Oh, yeah, he was part of a Montreal club that went all the way to the Stanley Cup final last year. Chris Russell can fall out of bed and give you 15 minutes if you need to. They used to say that about Al Oliver. He could fall out of bed and hit 320. Yeah. That's what Chris Russell can do for you on the back end. Cody Ceci has been better than I thought he was. And Duncan Keith, I mean, these are plus players. These are guys that have had playoff experience aplenty in the past. I think now is where Duncan Keith might really earn his money. And then you've got Evan Bouchard, who I think came to the wire like a thoroughbred. I thought perhaps his best 10 games of the year were the final 10 games of his career. Or final 10 games of the season. So he's now over 100 in his career. I like this club. I do. Having said that, they've accomplished in their own mind nothing at this point.
Right.
It's the second season. What they do in May and June will ultimately determine where this team falls on the mantelpiece, which, as you know, in Edmonton is pretty crowded.
Jack, when we take a look, I guess we're going to do comparables to 2006 here. When we take a look back at that run, Dwayne Rollison came in and just lit the world on fire in the final month, and they get in with a couple of games to go, and then they do some damage against the President's Trophy winners in Detroit, and then it keeps escalating from there. The goaltending here, everybody's been worried about it all season long, yet it has been really solid here since Woodcroft has come on board, to the point where I'm not as concerned about it all of a sudden as I was, let's say, 3 months ago. But what's your take on that?
Well, why would you be? I mean, Ken Holland's vision was ultimately proved to be correct, which is when fully healthy, and that is a big if. I mean, especially when you're dealing with Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith, which is, I think, 73 years a goaltender. Mike Smith wasn't healthy for the first 3 months. Mikko Koskinen carried the mantle, got on a couple of hot streaks. Mike Smith came back, struggled. Koskinen gave him another hot streak. And then the season kind of turned on a dime when Mikko Koskinen, who I think was on a 12-2-2 tear, came down with an illness, non-COVID related, and Mike Smith got hot in California. For the first time in the history of the franchise, they ran the table in California, Anaheim, San Jose, LA, admittedly not as strong this year, but nevertheless, that got Mike Smith's season going, and he's kept it up ever since, and now he's within one of Grant Fuhr's club record of 10 consecutive winning starts established in 1986. Other than that, Bren, though, I mean, I'd have to say this doesn't feel like a comparable. I mean, that Edmonton club in 2006 got in, I believe, and Robin's the expert here, game 81.
Yep.
And not expected by many. I mean, I think Oiler fans understood this club was starting to come together, but not many people had Edmonton over Detroit. I'm sorry.
No.
And the fact of the matter is Edmonton's a favorite. I think Edmonton, quite frankly, you look at their record inside the division, I don't know how you'd necessarily make Calgary a favorite over Edmonton if they meet in the second round and Calgary won the division. I mean, to me, that's a toss-up bare minimum. And in this series, though, what you have to pay attention to is the fact that the Oilers went on this tremendous run and are playing so well right now, second only to Minnesota, in the last 2 months of the year. And yet they finished 5 points ahead of Los Angeles. 5 points.
Yeah.
Best regular season the Oilers have put together in 35 years. And yeah, LA's without Drew Doughty, but they were without him the last 3 months of the year. They finished 5 points behind. So Edmonton's a favorite, but if you're thinking about putting the cart before the horse, I wouldn't.
Well, I'll tell you, Jack, it's funny. And I'll just reiterate, I think Bob has probably made reference to this stuff 117 times. Bob and I picked the Oilers to beat Detroit in 06.
Yes.
That's not because we're smarter than anybody. God knows that's not the case. But they were all wrong for Detroit. Detroit didn't want to play the way the Oilers could play. I like the Oilers against the Kings for that reason. I think if the Oilers rev it up, it's not going to be chalkboard hockey per se, but call it a track meet if you want. I don't think the Kings can stay with them. I don't think Kopitar at this age or anybody else can play the high-end defensive game, and I don't think they can get in the way enough when those forward lines are moving. I just don't like the matchup for the Kings. They're a good hockey club. I just don't like the matchup. How about you?
Well, the key for the Kings is going to be how, in my opinion, their most consistent line all year is actually their second line, that Philip Deneau. Now, it's interesting. Victor Arvidsson missed the last couple of practices. He's expected to play, but he and Moore have given LA a real solid second line and kind of strengthened the Kings down the middle. I mean, Philip Deneau leaving Montreal and going to LA, I think there's a reason the 2 seasons went, and everyone's going to say Carey Price. I'm telling you, LA made a huge acquisition there, and I don't think Montreal understand what it was losing in Philip Deneau. Yeah. So here's how I see the series playing out, Robin, perhaps a little bit differently than you might think. The Kings' strength all year long, and Tom McClellan talked about initially kind of bucking at this reputation and then understanding that it's part of the organization's spine, is check, check, check. That's how they won the titles in 12 and 14. Mm-hmm. And that is a principle that I think LA's organization, you can now say rests, a foundation, if you will. I think Edmonton, which has been patient all year in close games, and their record in 1-goal games and in overtime would suggest that they are, their patience is going to be put to the test. And here's why I like the matchup, Robin, and it is related to what you talked about. I think in a 1-1 game where a team will get, let's say, 6 scoring chances in the last 25 minutes, and that's all you're probably going to get if LA plays the way it's capable of.
Right.
But here's where I like Edmonton's elite finish. You talked about McDavid, Draisaitl. No one on the Kings roster is going to get that. And if they get 4 of those 6 chances, my money is on Edmonton perhaps getting 2 of those 6 chances to go in, and LA getting one of those 6 chances to go in. And as Daryl Sutter would tell all of us, in a 3-2 league, that math adds up to an Edmonton victory. I think this is going to be potentially a lower scoring series than many people believe, but because of the infrequency of scoring chances, not the frequency, I like Edmonton because of that elite finish and the depth of scoring we've talked about.
Jack, when we compare to last year's playoffs where the Oilers were swept by the Winnipeg Jets in a series that could have easily gone either way, the goaltending was pretty close. Hellebuck maybe just a little bit better than Mike Smith. The forward guys couldn't quite get it going because the back 6 or the bottom 6 guys were not able to contribute enough. This is a different bottom 6 with the Edmonton Oilers this time around.
Well, and what the acquisitions of Kane and Hyman have meant, and Robin talked about that at the outset, is there is no real temptation anymore to do what Edmonton did last year.
Yeah.
And that is, after most of the regular season keeping McDavid and Draisaitl separate, they went to McDavid and Draisaitl on the same line for much of that Winnipeg series. And I'll tell you what, if LA sees that, they're going to know they've got a foothold in this series,
right,
and that Edmonton is making a move they don't want to make. But I don't see Jay Woodcroft having to do it because, again, you've got Hyman and Kane. You know, they're 2 different types of power forwards. Hyman is kind of that slippery guy who finds his way into the blue paint, and Kane is the old, you know, the bull in the Merrill Lynch china shop back in the mid 1980s. You know, he's going there, whether you want him there or not. And he powers the puck into the net. That's what I like about Evander Kane. Everything he does is power. There is no tap in for Evander Kane. You know, a couple of the ones on the doorstep, he shoots into the net like he's taking the shot from 55 feet instead of 5 feet. There's a certain vengeance there in the Oilers' top 6 that I don't think was there, and a certain finish. And that's why I think, Bryn, and it's related to some degree to the bottom 6, but when you're able to now have McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins down the middle, that's as strong as any 4 centers in the league. And again, Ryan McLeod is your 4th line center with that kind of speed and that kind of versatility to play penalty kill, second power play unit. I think he could be a real X factor, not only in this series, but in the entire postseason.
Jack, I've got to ask you, because we could spend a lot of time on, I think Evander Kane's been a tremendous ad. And I just like Zach Hyman. He's the Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of things. But tell us what you've seen with Jay Woodcroft. I had all the respect in the world for Dave Tippett and for a lot of the coaches who've been through here in recent years. I mean, I covered the Kamloops Blazers with Ken Hitchcock as their coach, but he seems to have this group playing with each other and for each other in a way I haven't seen. And this is a rookie coach, not rookie to the NHL, but a rookie coach running his own bench in the National Hockey League. He's been impressive as hell to me. What do you see, though?
Well, I see him dragging everyone on the roster into the actual game. And that's something that at times you didn't see with Dave Tippett. You saw a lot of 25, 26-minute nights with McDavid and Draisaitl and 28, 29-minute nights with Darnell Nurse. Those minutes have come down steadily under Jay Woodcroft. He has revived the career, for instance, of a Derek Ryan. He has given more minutes to Ryan McLeod. And that's why I don't think you'll see the cut down to 9 forwards and 4 defensemen in a triple overtime game the way we saw last year in Winnipeg. One is the depth is greater, and there's more tools at Jay Woodcroft's toolbox. But even when Dave Tippett was here and had some of those weapons, I still felt like there was a reliance on the top 6 and the top 4 that isn't necessarily the same type of deal with Jay Woodcroft. And that's one of the reasons you've seen him go to the 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. It's another way to equitably distribute the minutes and keeping everyone fresh and keeping everyone engaged and keeping everyone in the game. Because when you're sitting on the bench and you haven't played in 2 or 3 periods, or you've played a spot shift here and there. Unless you're Peter Klima, you can't reasonably expect to do, anything when the chips are down. I think moving forward into this postseason, you're going to see a lot of guys that will be called upon if there's extra time needed that at least have played 10 to 12 minutes so they won't be ice cold on the bench.
We got about 30 seconds here. So who do you like in the series and in how many games?
I don't want to overthink this one. I think home ice advantage means as much to Edmonton as it does any team in the National Hockey League. And let's be candid. I'm not taking the Oilers off the hook for what's happened the last 2 years.
Right.
But the bottom line is there weren't any fans in the building. Now, that may not mean, in my opinion, and this is going to sound a little geocentric, but I'm sorry. I don't believe it means the same to Tampa Bay as it does to Edmonton. I'm sorry. I refuse to believe the energy that will be palpable in the building tonight. A kind of energy that says Game 6 against Anaheim, Jack, I don't care whether it's on the radio. Just shut up. No one can hear you anyways for the last 30 seconds of a hockey game. And you just let the crowd tell you what's going on and people can figure it out. That is not an atmosphere that's easily captured in any other building across the National Hockey League. So if I factor in home ice and the fact that Edmonton on paper has a better hockey club, why confuse the issue?
Yeah.
Edmonton in 5.
Okay, now before you go, I'm just bringing our next guest is going to be joining us here in a second. And he's joining us from the city to the south of us. And that is the longtime color commentator. This guy is pretty fantastic. Peter Loubardias is going to join us from Calgary. Jack, while Peter is hooking up, how do you see that series with the Calgary Flames against a team that we didn't think they were going to play in the Dallas Stars? All of a sudden, that's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I'll be curious to see what Peter, says about that series, because as we've talked about, I don't know how Calgary feels. But I don't think there's a favorite in that series. I honestly don't. I'm not disrespecting Calgary. I know they won the division going away. I think it's very easy, though, to look at all 4 of those games and say, you know what, Calgary wasn't what it became in the first 2 matchups. And the Oilers, first of all, a 9-5, I think by definition has to be categorized as a one-off, right? There's not going to be 9-5 games unless this turns into, what was it, Robin? The 85, the 85 Campbell final against Chicago. I don't see that happening. And then the other game was a game where Edmonton was down 8 regulars, and Peter and I talked about that before the game. Hey, I wish everyone was at full strength. And I'm sure, again, you look at the first 2, Calgary was not what it eventually became. I don't think there's a favorite in this series. Calgary's going to have home ice if it does come to fruition, but I would not feel comfortable if I was Calgary saying, well, the Flames should win this series. I think it is a toss-up in the truest sense of the word. If I'm Vegas, I'm saying the money line is zip.
I know you got to get down to a morning skate. Peter, do you have a response to that before we let Jack go?
Well, it's great to see you guys to begin with.
Thank you.
Second of all, I wasn't sure if you were talking about the Dallas-Calgary matchup.
No, Calgary's a heavy favorite in that one.
I don't know about that either, to be honest. But, we'll see how that plays itself out. Jack, I don't disagree with you. I really don't. I think if and when it happens, there will be an incredible amount of pressure on both teams. Both teams at that point will have won a series, which I think is very crucial for both their mindsets, because in the 2 respective markets, they feel right now like they have 2 pretty good teams, but I think and for good reason, there's some underlying feeling that until you do it, at least that's how I look at it, you haven't done it. There's no question, in my opinion. I think in the Los Angeles Kings, who have had an amazing year, Todd McClellan is going to be on my ballot for the Jack Adams. That's how good a job I think he has done. But like you said, like I don't bet, thank God, because I got enough problems without betting. I always joke, what is it today? We're sponsored by Bet369 or 3612 or whatever the hell it is. I think it's as even can get. And I like the Oilers team a lot. I like how they've been playing. They certainly have the most elite players in the series, but, it's funny because, Jack, I don't know how much attention you paid to the 80s and early 90s. And while we'll never get that again, if that series happens, it kind of reminds me of what it was like back then, in the sense that, Edmonton had all the star power, but Calgary was just a good, big, hard team to play against.
Yeah.
So, I got to tell you, I might be on an island. I can't decide yet whether I want it to happen or not. If it was not in the social media era, I would say yes. But it is going to be a gross show of humanity in this province.
Yeah.
And you know what? There might be fight. I mean, even the vendors might be fighting, to use a word from Slapshot.
Yeah.
But it'll be something. It'll be something.
See, that's where Peter, you can tell, is a better person than I, because I will revel in that show of inhumanity. I thirst for it. Peter's repulsed by it. I find myself almost gravitating toward it. I can't help it. You can take the dirtbag out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but sorry,
And Peter,
I'm a Western Pennsylvania guy.
I'm not gonna.
I feel this way about the Flyers. I want the Flyers to go 0-82 every game.
I can understand that. See, but listen, I'm a massive fan of you, Mr. Michaels. But you just sounded like Philadelphia right there. That's what somebody from Philadelphia would say. The city of brotherly love, my ass.
Yeah, no, I'm
How
with
about
you.
the city of edge? That's what I call Philadelphia.
Yeah, no, Pittsburgh, a much cleaner, much more beautiful
I like, in all sincerity, not just because it's you. When I started traveling many moons ago in the NHL, Pittsburgh, you grow up watching it on TV as a kid, and you think Pittsburgh, it's like Hamilton.
Yeah.
No, it's not like Hamilton in any way, shape, or form. It's frankly, when we were traveling, one of my favorite stops on the program. I love
the Golden Triangle. You betcha.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
it's awesome.
In fairness, when I grew up in the 80s, it was a bit of a concrete jungle. It has been revitalized starting in the mid to late 1990s. So I think it's still paying for that reputation that it did somewhat earn in the 70s and 80s when the steel mills first shut down, and Pittsburgh went through a transition where it was trying to discover itself. But the green space that's now been established there and just the general cleanup they've done, in no small part due to the addition of three tremendous ballparks and I should say sporting sites, the new Penguins Arena, and then the gorgeous Heinz Field and the Pirates ballpark, PNC Park, which is the best ballpark in Major League Baseball, even though
it's
no one
unbelievable.
goes. Yeah, even though no one goes, but you got the Clemente Bridge. I mean, it's a beautiful spot. It is interesting though, because I do. That's how I got interested in the Oilers to begin with, Peter. You know this. I couldn't stand the Flyers, and my rooting interest back then, as I rooted against as much as I did rooted for. So I started becoming quite familiar with the Oilers because they were beating the two teams I detested the most, the Philadelphia Flyers and the Boston Bruins, a bias that will occasionally creep in if you pay close enough attention. The other difference between Peter and I, he's flanked by the gentle tunes of Eric Clapton and Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Meanwhile, I got hopped up for this appearance on the podcast with a steady supply of Dr. Feelgood and Welcome to the Jungle. So
you got a morning skate to get to. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, but I know you got to get down there.
Peter's going to get enough of me, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to do him a favor and sign off so he can get a breather, and then he's going to see more of me, hopefully, in a couple of weeks than he wants to.
Okay, well,
it's not you I'm concerned about in that clash, by the way.
I have a hunch, and I think we all know who Peter's talking about.
It's a beautiful thing, though.
I will take the fifth. I will take the fifth before I get myself in trouble. Cheers, guys.
All right, Jack, thanks. We'll let you see your way out. We'll see you at the arena tonight. Thanks again.
Great seeing all of you. Cheers.
Enjoy.
Okay, so there he goes. Wow, I'm jacked up about 2 weeks from now, but both teams in Alberta have got some work to do beforehand. And now Peter joins us, obviously, from Sportsnet 960, The Fan in Calgary. Big series coming up. I did not think it was going to be Calgary and Dallas. But then again, I didn't think Nashville was going to have a complete meltdown on the final night of the regular season. Oh my God. How do you blow a 4-0 lead? We can talk about that all we want, but it's the Dallas Stars. People up here in Edmonton are thinking that's an easier run for the Calgary Flames, but it's the playoffs, Pete. Anything can happen.
You know, there's a lot of elements about Dallas that I really, really like. You know, they're deep, they're big, they're fast. In the likes of Rope Hintz and Jason Robertson, they really have a couple of young people who, in a sense, have taken the offensive mantle away from Tyler Seguin and, of course, their captain, Jamie Benn. 37-year-old Joe Pavelski he's a wonder. He is a true wonder of the sport. You know, nearly 80 points again this season at 37 years of age. I like a lot of their pieces on defense. Jake Ottinger, you never know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a really good goalie. But the playoffs is a different animal. You know, these teams have had nothing but 1-goal games in their first 3 meetings. They had an excellent playoff series in your city in the bubble a couple of years ago. Calgary's a really good team, and I'm not making light of it or try to undersell it. But until UC Saros got hurt,
right,
I might have actually preferred Nashville.
Really?
Yes.
And I'll ask why.
I think Dallas playoff wise in the last few years is more battle tested.
Okay.
I think they have good pieces that match up well against Calgary. Dallas is a funny team in this regard. Maybe I should say that Dallas would have been a better choice because they've been an enigma for me, guys. Yes. There are some nights that they look like the good Lord and Savior, and then the next night they look like one of the disciples, as I like to say. They when they are good, though, they're really good. And the scary thing for me is Jamie Benn is not the same guy that he used to be, but this is the time of year that he looks forward to. He loves big body hockey. If that guy figures it out to go along with the kids and their depth down the lineup with a bunch of good role players who know how to be frank, fellas, there's a lot of similarities between those two teams.
Peter, you see these guys every day. I really liked. I thought Calgary became this year what I thought they might become last year when Darryl arrived. Although there's been enough changes that this group is better suited to play how Darryl wants to play. But when you've got a guy like Tkachuk, who's now more than a pain in the ass, he's 100-point pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. I say little Johnny Gaudreau, and that's not meant to make him sound like a school kid. That's a hell of a year, contract year for him. It doesn't matter why he had it. He had it. This team is not just play heavy, wait for the breaks team. This team has some components that it didn't have before, at least players performing at a level that we haven't seen before.
Well, Robin, I probably want to start with your first comment. And your first comment is, yes, a lot of the same core remains. But what was added in the summer doesn't get enough credit, in my estimation, from the outside. So in Goodbranson and Nikita Zadorov on the back, you have a completely different element on defense that you did not have.
Big tough.
Didn't. You haven't had that element on your defense since Derek England left years ago for Vegas. So you completely change. Oliver Shillington has come in and found his way, which was one of the big surprises. So I'd start right there. But even more so, we've known one another for a long time, and all our chats would suggest that we're always usually pretty close on the same page at how we look at some things. And, I have yet to meet a coach, and Daryl's a great one, make no mistake about it. But the big thing is, does your group buy into what is being sold? So when you added, good veteran people, and you brought in a Trevor Lewis, and then you added Tyler Toffoli to go along with some of your excellent veterans, like Tanev and Markstrom, guys, forget about what they do on the ice.
Right.
With a full year under their belt, where they're not in separate, like these guys have really become great leaders, let alone great players. And with Mark, leaving the nest, Giordano, the leadership had to change here. And I think and there is only one leader in my mind, and that's the coach. So by getting Lewis and, guys who have played for Daryl before, they know how to do it. And in a world where we look at the young stars and assume they know how,
right,
it helps. And so in Calgary this year with the additions, they've had some great people to, when Daryl's tough and he's beyond tough, they have guys in that room to go, hey, listen, this works. We saw it early and often. Get through it. Get through it, and these guys know how to do it. So, yes, the top line for good reason. And the guy, by the way, on the top line that never gets enough credit is Lindholm.
Totally.
Elias Lindholm is this team's, for me, best and most important forward. He does everything.
Peter, he always seems to score the big goal at the right time for the hockey club.
And guys, one of the reasons I don't want to take anything away from Matthew and Johnny, they're great players and they've had incredible seasons, but it's like any other good team or good line. When you have somebody that glues it all together and allows those guys more freedom offensively, because this guy does all the heavy lifting and does it, I think, in a Selke Trophy manner. For me at this point, he really is, to me, the next coming of Patrice Bergeron. And that's about as high a praise as I can give. There are tremendous similarities between those two guys. I know there's only one Patrice, and I've loved that guy forever and couldn't respect the player more. But again, Patrice doesn't win scoring championships. He's not up for the Hart Trophy. Yes, he will win probably another Selke. But to the Boston Bruins or any other team that he's ever been involved with, get it done without him, that to me is Elias Lindholm.
Hey, break down the net minding for me here, because I've been fascinated by the way they have been utilized. And sometimes I go, I don't.
In what respect?
Well, it's just, I'm kind of thinking, okay, why would you make the change there? Like, why would you go with this guy over that guy in that particular game? Now, I'm not an NHL coach. The guy behind the Calgary bench certainly is. He knows exactly which levers to pull at the right time. But what happens here? Is there going to be one guy that's going to run the whole? It's got to be Markstrom. It's going to go the whole way here, because you got to be careful.
It's been Markstrom the whole way all season, and for good reason. Daryl's philosophy is this. This guy has everything mapped out to a science. Like, he does not get enough. This is a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
On the outside, you might not think that sometimes.
No, he's sharp.
But he, like, most of the time he's playing chess and we're playing checkers.
Totally.
So I asked him early in the year, okay? What do you think about your starting goaltender? Well, we pay him $6 million a year. That's why we brought him here. He's a number one guy. I want him to play 3,500 minutes. That's generally what I look for from a starting number one goaltender. I think he played 36-56 when it was all said and done.
Right.
It became very consistent in how he used him. He didn't use him a lot in road back-to-backs. Played him a ton at home. It's always harder. You know, I remember John Garrett saying to me when we worked together years ago that he always thought it was easier for a rookie goalie to get his feet wet on the road. So Vladar, who did an excellent job in his role, but no, that's, and the other thing about Jacob is, like, Bryn, I don't get frustrated, but in this market, and you worked here, so you and I share something. We've both worked in each other's markets.
Yeah.
This goaltending thing drives me frickin' bananas. I heard, like, every time Markstrom was going to play a run of games, it was like, when's the other guy going to play?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you waited for another Mika Kiprasov for 100 years, and now you've got one, and you're more concerned about when the other guy's going to play? Stop. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like, and in this town, and I get it, Mika is a legend. When I was, since I've been here, outside of maybe Lindholm, Mika was my most favorite guy to watch in terms of my appreciation for what he did each and every single night. That's so I understand why he's revered and why he is loved. And I think in this town, there are people that feel like it's sacrilege if you like somebody other than him.
That might be a Canadian issue in any Canadian market.
You know, I'm with you, Pete, because I'll tell you what, and all of us are old enough to remember, you know, guys can play 65 games, 60 plus games. The travel now is better than it's ever been. Now that we're out of this COVID situation, the travel, the medical attention you get, the day off, rest or / exercise you can get, mandated days off. Go with your guy. If you know what you do, and Daryl, I love how you characterize him. Anybody who thinks Daryl's kind of the rube cowboy, they have no clue who they're dealing with, because he is smart and he's clever like the fox. He knows as a player when a guy can go. And the first thing a good coach does, somewhere along the line, he'll say Jacob or Jake, whatever he calls him, you good to go? Just not that the player makes the call, but he knows where the player's at. And if a player says, you know, I don't feel right, I don't feel good, a smart coach takes that into account. But a guy can play most nights. It doesn't matter how much he makes. This seems to be a new thing where we need a 50-32 split or something. Go with your guy. You go with the horse you rode in on, no?
Do we look to bench Johnny Gaudreau every third game because he might get tired or might get hurt?
Yeah.
Now, listen. Okay, I understand. Ask Nashville what it's like right now with their goaltending situation.
Yeah.
So, yes, you want your best guy in the best condition he can be in going into the playoffs. Yeah. But my other part of the argument is, guys, is this. So I'm okay with managing Jacob, and guess what? Once they clinched the division and clinched the playoff spot, guess what they did? They gave him 4 days off, and then he played one game. And now he's got 4 days off after playing Thursday in Minnesota. That's plenty. That's plenty.
Yeah.
So again, and this conversation will start it started in October. And my thing is always, A, I don't pay this guy to sit.
Right.
And B, if I don't have playoffs to manage, what the hell am I worried about managing it before? Like, I got to get there first.
Correct. Hey, who's going to be the guy that's going to come out of the woodwork here in the playoffs? Because we know the top two lines always get checked to death. I'm a big proponent of your bottom six guys can really give your top six guys a lot of space by scoring the odd goal. Who's going to be the guy to come out of the woodwork for the Flames?
Well, I look at it this way. In Calgary this year, acquiring Yarncroke, who was acquired, then got really sick, and now has come back, I think is going to be a big piece. But believe it or not, because of what you said, Bryn, I think the most key line for the Calgary Flames offensively to have a long run is the Backlund line.
Okay.
When Michael Backlund is a terrific, not defensive player, but a two-way player and is a threat to score, this team doesn't lose very many games. Michael, and listen, he's my, I wouldn't go to dinner, truthfully, with too many guys, and they sure as heck don't want to go for dinner with me. That's a starter.
You could go with Michael, though. He's a great guy to talk to.
Listen, as you know, he is everything about a human in professional sports that you would want. I've been cheering for him forever. And now I cheer for people more than I do for teams, except when they wear the maple leaf, but that's a long other story. That one's never going
You're talking about the red maple. You're talking red maple leaf here. Let's clarify that. Or
to hell with the guys in Toronto. Too.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I had that go around for many years as well. But I think that line, and I think Blake Coleman, and not just because he did it in Tampa,
right.
and they don't have the same kind of Gord, Goudreau, Coleman line here, but two guys for me. And if I had an X factor up front, it's Dylan Dubé.
Okay.
And the thing I've always loved about Dylan, and I find in sports, when it happens early, it's not a coincidence. Dylan in the spotlight has always been good. As a 16-year-old at the Memorial Cup, excellent in 2 World Juniors, including the second one when he was a captain. In the bubble in Edmonton a couple of years ago, he was one of their best forwards. And he's on a roll right now going in. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but Backlund needs to be at a really, really high level, and an X factor for me is Dylan Dubé.
Well, I hope we talk again in a couple of weeks. That'll be a lot of fun, even though some of us are looking forward to it more than others. But before I let you go here, okay, so how do you see this series playing out? Jack didn't really give us an answer. He did say it was going to be close, but what about this series that you're going to be watching?
Well, I don't make predictions, so I'm not going to make one here.
Okay. Are you traveling at least on the road? Are you going to have a shot at fresh seasonal berries in Dallas? Are you going?
Nope.
So everybody's staying home?
I don't even think we're going to go to Edmonton if it happens.
Real? Now, I find that hard to believe.
Well,
because you know what it's going to be like.
Call me right before the series if it happens.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing it from the hotel across the street,
well, we'll drag you down.
If I'm doing it from my rental for the hockey season here in Calgary, then you'll know the answer.
Gotcha. Super. Hey,
I think it's going to. I don't know what would happen. Daryl has said all year he thought that the division ran through Vegas and Edmonton. I thought that too. But again, in the case of Vegas, everything that could have gone wrong, injuries, in sports, and they were due. After the run they had for the first 4 years, they hockey gods probably came along and went, you guys should get a little reality down there because you really haven't had any. I think it's a pick'em series. I think Jacob Markstrom will have to be Calgary's best player.
Right.
And, I can't wait to see in that series how the top guys handle the pressure.
Well, listen, we'll let you roll. Have some fun. You got some game prep to do today, even though it starts up on Tuesday. So enjoy the kind of day off before you really dig in here, because it's going to be a long run for a couple of teams. I think yours is going to be one of them.
I've come to learn in sports,
you never
there's
know.
a reason they play them. You have no idea, which is kind of the beauty. Just like you two beauties.
Well,
all right, guys.
I got to say one last thing, too. You know why they call it the Stanley Cup Playoffs? Because you can't call it goalie. That's a dumb name for the playoffs, because it always seems to boil down to the goaltending, so let's watch carefully.
I don't disagree with that.
Say hi to your partner for us. We'll be talking to him in a couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, all right.
See you, Pete. So here we are. It's the spring, and hey, look who's in the studio. Brent McIntosh from the McIntosh Group at Remax River City. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Brent?
Great. It's nice to have you in here. The spring is here. And things are getting busy?
Spring has sprung and the market is on fire, Bryn. Absolutely incredible. For single-family houses anyway, in Edmonton.
Really? And it's just kind of flipped the switch, huh?
I've never seen an increase in values this much in the last 30 days. Absolutely incredible. Edmonton's growth for the single-family market. And I can't put a pinpoint on why, but it's pretty awesome if you own a house in Edmonton.
Now, with the economy the way it is, and it's just kind of crazy right now with everything that's going on in the world, how is that affecting us?
That's a great question.
Do you want some time to think about it?
I do. Yeah, I don't know if it's not like Edmonton's completely insulated from everything, but if we're talking about the Russian war, for example, and the price of oil, that's nothing but a good thing for all of Alberta. So that's going to drive house prices. The unfortunate positive of a horrible negative. Of course, every time you pay more at the gas pump, it's brutal as a family, but pretty good for the economy.
Yeah. So how do people get involved? If they're thinking about it, now's the time to move, right?
Well, definitely. If you're thinking about selling, I can't think of a better time to give us a call. We're at 780-464-0075. And either myself or one of my team members will be happy to meet with you to talk about the sale of your property.
What about getting an evaluation done on their house if they're looking at selling?
Yeah, that's where we'll start. Completely complimentary. No obligation, and we'll sit down, we'll talk about the value, we'll show what's going on in the market, and we'll even give you, the seller, some tips on how to get the most out of their house.
Perfect. So once again, how do people get a hold of you?
780-464-0075 or on the web, macintoshgroup.ca.
And here you are in the sports thing. It's nice to have you here.
Well, I love watching you guys do the sports show.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay, well, that's it for this episode of The Outsiders, which is powered by the McIntosh Group at Remax River City. Robin, before we go, and who knows when people are going to download this, but we can't worry about that when the Stanley Cup playoffs are getting rolling. Let's give our predictions quickly for the first round of the playoffs. Let's rattle through it. I'm not going to get into breakdowns. I'm just going to tell you who I think is going to win and how many games. So let's start with the Oilers and the Kings. Who you got in that one?
Oilers in 5 games.
Okay. I have the Oilers in 7. There's the Flames and the Stars. How about that one?
Flames in 5.
I'm with you on that. We have the Avalanche taking on the Predators. Whew.
Denver in 5.
Okay, and I'm taking the Avs in 5 as well. Blues and the Wild to wrap things up in the Western Conference.
Well, you take the first one for
okay,
one.
Okay, I'm actually taking St. Louis in 5.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not taking St. Louis in 5. I'm actually taking the Wild in 6.
Yes, as am I.
Okay, there you go. Over in the Eastern Conference, I wanted to get a reaction out of you though on that one, but that's going to be a great series, the Blues and the Wild. Okay, over in the East, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the defending until we have a new champ, the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning, playing a team that hasn't won in the playoffs the first round since 2004, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Who you got?
The Lightning shouldn't even show up for this. They have no chance to beat Austin Matthews and the Maple Leafs. I'm going Lightning in 6.
I see what you did there. And I, too, am taking Tampa in 6. However, they've just been so mercurial over the last 2 months where I'm going, is like, seriously. However, they have the power just to pick it up in one period and win. But I haven't seen them play a full 60-minute game in a while, but I've been tuning in a lot lately. Florida and Washington.
Oh, Panthers in 5.
That's what I got. I'll give you mine right off the top here. Carolina and Boston. I am taking the Hurricanes in 6.
We agree again. I think it could be even sooner, quicker than that.
Okay.
But let's say 6. 5 or 6, yeah, for
All
sure.
Right. And the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm going with the New York Rangers in 6 games.
Oh, yes, we fools seldom differ. Yet again, that's what I have. I have the Rangers in 6 games.
Okay. I just think that they have done so many wonderful things this season quietly, which is really shocking when you consider that it's only the media capital of the world.
And then
New York City.
Unless Sidney Crosby shaves 10 years off his body clock and goes mercurial again, because I tell you what, he's still a player, and it makes me nervous. But the Rangers are a much better hockey club.
Pittsburgh also got great goaltending out of Tristan Jarry's, who is in a situation where I think it's very questionable where he's going to jump in the postseason. We'll see. And as for Sid, all the respect in the world. I love Sidney Crosby. I think he's fantastic. However, watching the Oilers game in Pittsburgh last week, was he even playing?
I know.
I didn't even notice it. It was really, I found it actually kind of sad. That's how I viewed it. However, when you're used to playing way up here and then you come down with the rest of the pack, it's quite noticeable to me. But I'm cheering for him. I hope he does well here in the postseason. But he's also had a hell of a run.
Yeah.
So
before we go.
Yes.
And off the playoff track, Guy Lafleur.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah, that was tough news. It's been a tough few weeks, has it not?
Mike Bossy. Now, Guy Lafleur, watching the people file into the Bell Center to see him off before his service. I don't know if you saw it, Bryn.
Yes.
George Larac showed a very good picture of somebody must have taken a picture of George waiting in line to see Lafleur.
Yeah.
With all the with the coffin and the banners in the background. It was taken from behind him, and I tell you what, I don't know why that hit so hard. I mean, I was the Islanders fan, and Bossy was enough, but this one is like, really? I mean, maybe it's the cumulative total of the two of them so close together, but man, that's a big chunk of hockey history in a short time to have to say farewell to, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is Mike Bossy was so instrumental in the New York Islanders' monstrous run in the 80s. There's just something about Guy. Now, we're in Canada, too, so your Saturday night games for the longest time, even before the World Hockey Association was merged with the NHL, Guy and the Montreal Canadiens through the 70s were a staple. You saw them every Saturday night. Yeah. Generally here in Alberta, we saw the Leafs on Wednesday night, but it was a tough one for me, and I'm with you. And like I said, losing Mike Bossy is difficult, but losing Guy Lafleur was just at the next level. No. However, there's one thing the Montreal Canadiens do better than any other team. They just honor their history far better than anyone else. I know there's going to be some people who are going to debate that, and to me, they just seem to know how to do it. They know how to say hello, and they know how to say goodbye to their veteran players.
Never forget Rocket Richard's last appearance
at the
rink
at the Forum. Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable is a good word. But anyway, we should not be getting, what's the term, verklempt at the end here. But
I don't want to get melancholy. We have the postseason starting up, Robin.
Yeah, time to get revved up, not. But you know what? Tough week now. Let's we move on to what people wait for. And especially around here, the playoffs, the regular season doesn't mean a damn thing unless the Oilers go at least a couple of rounds deep.
Make sure you check us out on Twitter. The handle's really simple. It's @Outsiders2020. And also tell your friends to subscribe to our RSS feed or follow our RSS feed on any of your favorite ear candy sites like Apple, Google, Spotify, etc., etc. We're also on YouTube. Robin records from the Lucky Sam studio in Southwest Edmonton. I'm at the Road 55 studio in downtown Edmonton. Your support is greatly appreciated. Hey, like once again, just retweet. We tweet out a fair bit on our Outsiders handle, so make sure you retweet the fact that our latest podcast is out there so that some of your friends who probably don't even know we exist now know we exist. It's all been part of the fun for us over the last couple of years as we're now way past the 100 mark on this podcast. So, hey, Robin, before we go, I believe it was a wise young man who once said, "Play La Bamba, baby." Yeah, so let's play La Bamba. Ben, we're with you, kiddo. Man, yes, he's been an inspiration. He has been fun to watch, and he's having such a good time. I hope he has a good time through the entire playoffs. He's going to be in Los Angeles. Did you know that? For games 3 and 4.
Hey, a little Disneyland and a little LA Kings. What do they call that? What do they call in the Staples Center now? The
Crypto.com arena.
That's Staples Center to me. Sorry.
It still is. And I don't think they'll be doing it, but... All right, listen, we'll talk to you later, okay?
Okay, see you.
Enjoy the playoffs, by the way.
Bye-bye, boys. Have fun storming the castle.
Road 55.